All righty, and we are live. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. It is 5 p.m. Eastern time here in Miami, Florida, and we have a very, very interesting interview, an interview that many of you asked me to do with our good friend Ismael Perez. Ismael, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for coming on to this YouTube Live, and I look forward to see what's going to transpire throughout it.
Thank you for having me here, Jason. I appreciate being here as well.
Absolutely. So there's a few things I want to start with on this live to really preface with, because there is so much going on with you, obviously. And you really seemingly came out of nowhere. You came out of nowhere, you're suddenly everywhere. And there are a lot of people that love everything that you're doing. And there are some people that are just like, what's going on here? Healthy skepticism, whatever you want to call that. So I want to start this interview with a preface of really showing certain similarities over here, which is really the reason why I chose to do this interview in the first place. And I want to take us back about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, September 9th of 2020, 9/9 at 9 a.m. Eastern time, I was instructed to put out a document. That document was called the Pyramid Code. And don't ask me how, because I don't know how in terms of the actual logistics. But in a very short period of time, that document was seen by millions around the world. I didn't have a platform. I didn't have anything. And suddenly, out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere, I was everywhere in a very short period of time. And with that, there came a lot of questions. And there came two sides to those questions. There were a lot of people that said, I really like this guy. He's onto something. And then there were other people that said, what's this guy up to? He came out of nowhere. Maybe he's a plant. Maybe it's a psychological operation. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And I knew where I came from. I knew who I am. I know who I am. So I just kept going. I stayed consistent. Of course, thank God the truth did prevail. 2 years later, here we are. And I do give a lot of credit to the TLS organization, which we will speak about throughout this interview in connection to a few things that you're doing as well, and the knowledge that you have. But the reason why I'm sharing that is because I wouldn't have been here today as myself, as me, as the identity, so-called, of Jason Sherka, if people didn't give me a chance. And at that time was the most critical point, because there were a lot of people saying a lot of things of, what the hell is this guy up to? And it was those certain individuals, and there were a lot of them, amazing human beings, that for one reason or another decided to give me a chance, which is what really brought me to the point that I'm at today. Of course, I had to do the work, and I remained consistent, and my intention was always there, and that's why we got here. But I see so many similarities in what's going on with you right now, Ismael. And that's why I really wanted to do this interview, because you seemingly came out of nowhere. And I know that you didn't come out of nowhere from your perspective, because you have a story. You have a story of what brought you to this point in time. And of course, I did as well. And I want to ask you about that story. But the reason why I'm sharing that is because I think that no matter what, first and foremost, we must give each other chances, especially when it comes to this team of unity, this team of humanity that we're building over here. And there's no other way to build it other than coming together. And the last thing I'm going to say before we move on into this interview and to close off this preface is the fact that, and it's something that I say a lot, unity does not mean we all always agree with each other. And I promise you that there will be certain points in this interview where Ismael doesn't agree with me and I don't agree with Ismael, and that's fine. The fact of the matter is from everything that we can see, with the intentions being put out there, we're all on the same team here. And being on the same team doesn't mean we all have the same psychology and the same philosophy, and that's okay. But the most important thing, and what I think is very important to do with anybody, is we give each other a chance. The truth will prevail from there. I promise everybody that's watching this right now, whether you're watching it live or on the replay, if it's real, you will resonate. That goes for me, that goes for Ismael, that goes for absolutely anybody that's doing this work. And with that, I also want to say thank you, Ismael, because I know that this work is not easy. The past 2 years of my life has not been easy. It's been very gratifying, but it's not easy, especially when you have people coming at you from so many different angles. So no matter what, I want to say thank you for the work that you're doing, because regardless, you put a lot on the line, especially with what you're going through on a personal level. And that's for another conversation as well, with certain illness and things that I know you speak about publicly in regards to your family and whatnot. It's not easy, and you're doing it anyways. And for that, I really do want to say thank you to start this interview. So I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Jason, for that. Appreciate that introduction. I've been around, I guess, not in the public's eye until maybe about 4 months ago, really. But technically, I started my Instagram about 2 years ago. That's when I slowly but surely started popping into the limelight. Before that, I dedicated my life to 25 years of solid research, not, investigating things for myself, meditation. I guess I lived the hermit life, but at the same time, I was raising 2 kids. I was working from home and I was taking care of my wife. So to me, it was a matter of balancing. And I actually wrote my first book at the age of 28. It was about 3 years older than you when I first wrote my book. And I self-published it. However, back then in 2008, there was no social media. So The Secret Government, that was the name of the book, didn't really do well. I think only 13,000 copies were sold, and it was just word by mouth. And after a while, it didn't really go anywhere because I didn't really have a platform or anything. However, that book was intense, revealing like the true history of the earth, the battle between good and evil, and the different secret society organizations, both from the light and the dark, revealing the truth about 9/11 and all kinds of stuff that people have recently discovered in the last 5 to 10 years. So when I wrote that book, everybody called me a conspiracy theorist, of course. Back then, the awakening wasn't as far as I want to say as where it is today. It was still kind of rippling. In 2008, you talked about stuff like that. You were automatically considered a conspiracy theorist. So I've been around. It's just I wasn't in the limelight. I've been working from behind the scenes, and through many years of research, studies, and my connections to the extraterrestrials that I work with, I've been able to gather a lot of information pertaining to the galactic scenario and how it relates to the events that are unfolding on the Earth. And more so, I came to discover that this whole, war between good and evil is actually something that transferred from many other universes. So I wrote our cosmic origin as a result of that, and took me about 20 years to research it, 10 years to write it. The manuscript was completed in 2016, but they kept telling me that the collective of humanity was not ready for this next level intel or this next level knowledge. And so the manuscript just sat there. It just sat there for about 7 years. And, the whole time I wrote it, I was writing it, Jason, I felt like I was being an instrument, like something would just come through me as I was typing. Because when I wanted to just type for myself, when I would just sit there in front of the computer, I couldn't even get a sentence in. But when I was connected to that, when I was in alignment with my higher self, it just would flow, effortlessly. I would type for hours. And that's how the book came about. But it's out there, it's out there. And then a year ago, that's when they informed me, they said, Ismael, I think the collective is ready to understand, this information. And that's when my book, I published it. Actually, it's been under a year. I published it at the end of last August or the beginning of September. Could be a year. I think September is in 2 days. So yeah, I think it could be a year. This is the year anniversary of my book being out. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I didn't really think it was going to take off fast. I thought it was going to be a few years, but when they told me that the collective of humanity is ready for this, next level cosmic disclosure, it just took off. It took off, and then within the last few months, it's just been taking the world by storm. And I could understand why people are questioning me, like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? Is he a plant? Is he working for the dark cats? Whatever. And the answer is no. That's not the case. I've been working from behind the scenes for many years. It's just that I've been a hermit this whole time. And the only reason I got social media, the only reason I got Instagram about 2 years ago was because I was getting ready to publish my book and I just needed a platform. Yeah, so my intention from the beginning was really not to become popular or anything. That was never my intention, and it was just pretty much to bring forth this message to humanity. And many people from across the world, Jason, are resonating with my book. I get emails, I get DMs for both, platforms, Instagram, Facebook, people just thanking me for the information that I'm sharing, for the work that I do, saying that my book has actually activated them, that they are having memories to these galactic, histories that took place, memories of other worlds before we came to the Earth. And to me, that is priceless. It's every time I get feedback like that I change people's life in a positive way, where they transformed, where they, yeah, it's the best. You know the feeling. You've done the same. Many of the people that follow you because you're a great spiritual teacher, and you have a lot to offer, and you've been helping, tons of people, and I think that's priceless when people thank you for the work that you do, and for the positive effect that you had on their lives. I mean, it almost like it makes me want to cry sometimes, because I'm just an instrument. I never claimed to be this or that. I'm just an instrument of light, of goodness, and as you are. And I'm just here to do my part, just like you are, because in the end, we have this common goal, Jason, and that is to bring forth a heaven on earth, to bring forth a type of utopia where everybody could flourish, where people could actually live their own version of heaven on earth, where people could, live a life where they do what they like to do best, whether it is through their talents or their hobbies, and make a living out of that. And that's what we call five-dimensional society. So just in a nutshell, that's just brief.
Yeah. No, I think it's really important for people to understand where you come from, so it's no longer seemingly out of nowhere, because you've lived a full life. You've done everything that you've done. There's so much work that I know that you've done behind the scenes, because I know what I've done in a short period of time as well. Again, I'm smiling as you're speaking because there's a lot of similarities. For example, before I even made an Instagram, and I wasn't on social media at all, I deleted all of it. I said, I'm just disconnecting. Took about 1.5 to 2 years to just hermit, go in my own cave, do my own thing. And that's when I really just developed a lot of my own inner everything, whatever that is, that's still developing, and probably will continue developing till the day I die, and the same for all of us, or transition, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, when I first started, I also made the Instagram because I was publishing my first book, and that book was Forming the Formless. So again, a lot of similarities, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that there's something going on here that's just interesting, and I do believe that there's a reason why we connected. I want to speak about something when it comes to overarching, like tasks, obligations, responsibilities, roles, things like that. So from what I know about you so far, from our conversations, from interviews that I've watched here and there about you as well, and with you, just a part of those interviews, I understand that you're connected to your own, I'll call it like an organization or group or whatever you want to call it. And we could talk about that in just a second. That's very spiritually oriented. And where I come from is a very also spiritually oriented in terms of how TLS works, but they're physical, meaning I can go and sit around the table and have a meeting with them. I can pick up my phone and call somebody, which, by the way, I had a conversation with Ray, as I told you before we went live with this interview, just a couple hours ago, regarding a question that I wanted to ask you on this live, which we'll get to as well, in regards to reincarnations and things having to do with King Solomon and even King David and that lineage as a whole. So we'll get there in a second. But the reason why I'm sharing what I'm sharing is because I want to lead into a question and a comment, which is this idea that there is a beautiful complement that I'm seeing here that I don't know how it's going to evolve, but we'll put it on the record right now on this interview. You're coming from a very spiritually oriented place with your connections in the way that you do. Something that I understand, but is not my expertise when it comes to the types of things that you do and the types of things that you know. I come from the level of, and maybe because this is how I was brought up, so I have to ease into it, of, again, pick up the phone, call, ask about the earthquake, ask about this operation, get a briefing, share it, things in that way. And then, of course, evolve into the more spiritual side of life. And I think not just when it comes to my relationship with you and our relationship together, but in general, when we can find complements in this world that we're creating and this new paradigm shift that we're moving into, I do believe that you need both in order to complete that, cycle, because it's a cycle that's bridging the gap between the matrix, 3D, which isn't bad if we know how to use it, and 5D, this new earth, this new world that we're creating. And I think when we have the soldiers, the tools, the instruments, whatever you want to call ourselves, that can bring in both and bridge the gap, that's heaven on earth, where we connect and bridge the gap between all these dimensions and all these different realities that are happening simultaneously to show us the true power that we have to heal ourselves, to reach our highest potential, to do all of these things. So I want to ask you, when it comes to where you come from, and then I'm going to ask you a few questions about what you know about TLS and that whole world. When it comes to where you come from, can you tell us a little bit more about, I'll say, like, who do you work for, but who are you working with? Who are you connected to? What is this? Like, give me the bigger picture there.
I work for a very highly advanced spiritual organization that actually exists in the 13, 14, and 15 dimensions beyond the local universe. They're in charge of the evolutionary trajectory of many, many universes, known as the Emerald Order. So the Emerald Order is the organization that I answer to. They are the ones that are behind the intergalactic alliance of the Guardian Alliance, which is a union of many galaxies that are, fighting towards the same goal and end, which is to bring peace to the cosmos. Underneath them, we have several groups. We have a splinter group known as the Raw Confederacy. Some people might have heard of them. They are the source behind the raw material and the law of one teachings, which is Christ consciousness and unity consciousness, service to others. Within that group, we have several groups, several races rather, that are extremely advanced. We have the Azurites. We also have the Atones, the Amorites, and the Brigidettes. And of course, some people might know the Azurites as the Blue Evians. So there's different names to describe these groups. Underneath those, we have galactic structures. We have galactic, intergalactic, stellar communities. So that goes into the Galactic Federation in our galaxy, but every galaxy has its own version of Galactic Federation. So the Galactic Federation in our galaxy is pretty much the forces behind what I would call the White Hats, and it consists of Andromedans, Lyrans, Pleiadians, Arcturians, Vegans, people from Tau Ceti, Alpha Centauri, Procyon, just to name a few. It's actually a conglomerate of over 200,000 solar systems within our galaxy that are working together to bring peace to the entire Milky Way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question. So first of all, for anybody that's listening to this, again, whether you're live, replay, whatever it is, I just want to mention something over here. My goal, I think our collective goal here, is to bring as much, I'm going to use the word information, but it's even more than that. It's awareness, which is more than just information and data, to the masses, to spark this fire within us, to bring us to where we probably once were in the past, a very long time ago, probably multiple times, and still are in different parts of this galaxy, universe, beyond, and so on. For anybody who's on the cusp of, like, what am I listening to right now? If you don't understand what Ismael is saying right now and saying, where does this fit? I just want to be the guy that's going to tell you, you don't have to know exactly where it fits into your journey and your process right now. Sometimes we're given pieces of a puzzle and we don't always know where to put them because our puzzle isn't constructed enough. I believe that people like Ismael, by the way, are coming to the forefront in this time because there's a puzzle that's being constructed, and those pieces may fit for some people, may not for others, but they will eventually, one way or another, because if anybody thinks we're the only life in this universe, I don't know what to tell you. That's a whole other conversation. But there is a lot going on here, a lot that I don't know about, a lot that many of us don't know about. And that's why we're here to support each other with this, what starts as information and education and flows into awareness. So it starts with information, education goes into awareness, and that's when we start remembering. So it goes from a learning process to a remembrance process. That's what we're moving into right now. So I bring that up right now for anybody that says, well, I don't know about this. I'm just going to remind you that if you're following my channel and you're following any of the work that I do, I also say some things that are like, not that far off from what Ismael is saying. It's only different. If you can accept that there are dark organizations with high technology doing horrible things in the world, then of course there's the exact opposite. And there are organizations of light doing incredible things in the world. And I mean, it's kind of, forget even about awareness, it's common sense at that point. If there's one, there is the other. We do live according to the law of balance in this dimension. And balance is all there is. So I want to bring that up as Ismael is sharing everything that he's sharing, because even if you don't know where the pieces of the puzzle really fit, just hold them. You know, don't try to fit them somewhere. Just let them be there. Things will come together at some point in time. So with that being said, Ismael, you're giving us a big picture structure over here. A lot of the things that you're mentioning, I don't know about. I've never learned about. I don't know a lot of those names. My question for you is in that picture, if you know, I don't know if you know, do you have any knowledge when it comes to the organization that in many ways I work with? I speak on behalf of TLS, the light system. What is your, if you have any knowledge or information or understandings or maybe even connections to that organization, can you share anything on that? And if so, I'd like to, maybe there's a way to show people how these two connect, and I don't even know, right? So I do know, before you answer that, I do know that TLS has told me many times, there are tons of organizations and federations and teams out there that are working for the greater good of humanity, for the betterment of humanity. I don't know them all personally. I don't deal with them all personally. I'm the direct connection to TLS specifically, but I mean, to be able to speak to other individuals that are working with that, that's a dream for me. You know, that's what I would love to do. So if you can touch up on that and just kind of share whatever you know.
Sure. Before I answer that question, I'd just like to rewind a little and remind people that, you know, our entire multiverse, and yes, there are multiple universes, is teaming up with life on all levels of reality, even beyond the 11% or 4% that, you know, we see as galaxies. And this includes civilizations and intelligences that exist in the other 96% of the dark matter and dark energy realms that we don't have access to. But you know, it's, the universe is bigger than what we were told. And just how we have negative races out there, we have positive races as well. Duality exists everywhere. And so with that have said, to answer your question, the only thing I know about the light system is that it's a spiritual organization. And like you said, it's also a physical organization that I was able to verify. They also told me that they're good. Obviously, they're working for the light. And I don't really know much of the details. To be honest with you, Jason, the only reason I digged into trying to see what they would tell me about TLS is because of you. You know, I've been listening to your stuff with Ray sometimes, and I kind of wanted to see how this connects with who I work with and the people that I'm being an instrument for. And it appears that there could be two different parallel Earths that are coming into convergence. You know, in one parallel Earth, the light system is represented by all these unseen forces beyond our dimension, working together with physical beings, like you said, that, you know, beings that you could actually give a call to and go and meet at a Starbucks and have physical conversations with. And then another universe, you know, it's called the Federation with, or the Alliance, or the Y-Hats, whatever you want to call it, which is what I've been coining. So they could be two sides, two different realities coming together all of a sudden. And so that's just my perspective on it. Like I said, I really don't know much about TLS. And maybe, you know, you could enlighten me more about TLS.
Sure. We could have endless conversations about that one.
Okay. Well, based on what I've heard, you and throughout your conversations with Ray, is that you guys have people at the organization, like the leaders of the organization, have superhuman abilities, right? They could do things that the average person couldn't do. And that
could do, but is not yet developed. We can all do the majority of those things.
Just we all have the gifts. Exactly. We all have the gifts, but some people are already, you know, for example, like the movie Doctor Strange, some people are already bending reality like that. Yes. They're coming from one dimension to the other, and they're moving energy and manipulating matter with their mind. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. These people do exist, you know, and according to my research, they're known as the White Wizards. And they have always existed. They've been, they're the ancient high priests and high priestess of Atlantean times. You know, they actually, you could trace them all the way back to Atlantean times. They were the ones that held loyalty, that preserved the teachings of the law of one unity consciousness, and throughout all of our Earth's history, they were the ones that had been fighting the dark magicians who have been in control of the dark hats, because even the dark hats answer to sorcerers and black magicians.
Yes,
Both. Yeah. So magic is very real. Of course, to a primitive world, they, it's very hard for them to understand that, but there are many advanced spiritual civilizations out there that use a type of technology that allows their consciousness to infuse with the elements, with the earth and the crystals, and they're able to formulate beautiful, green, luxurious architecture, living structures, because of this advanced technology that they use with their mind. It's a consciousness-based technology, and I believe that we're heading that way, in that direction. As human beings, we're going to all have the opportunity to develop these gifts and fuse our consciousness with the elements and do these marvelous supernatural feats. So there is a correspondence between the white magicians that are at the head of the alliance and the leaders of the TLS that are at the head of the organization as well. It's just just how you guys have super soldiers, enhanced humans that are able to do the impossible, live in water for a few hours, right? We also have project. It was called a project. Forget the name of the project. Seagate. Project Seagate was developed to create a human dolphin hybrid. And many people were part of that, where they were actually able to live in the water. And this had a lot to do with some Stargate in the Gulf of Eden in the 1980s. So
there's actually a race, while we're on that topic. There's a race so I know of, and there are many, many more, but I know of 3 extraterrestrial races that directly work with TLS, physically speaking. We're talking about, like, you can walk into a building in New York City and you'll see them if you're in their headquarters, so long as, like, you can get to that point. One of them, and by the way, these races, 2 of these 3 races are actually spoken about in the Zohar thousands and thousands of years ago. So they are in Hebrew in the words that I'm going to give you, but it's Sia, Nashia, and Kono. Sia and Nashia are 2 races that are spoken directly within the Zohar. I know that because, number one, I was told that from within knowledge of the organization. You can go to the Zohar. I've never read the Zohar myself. I'm not at that level yet, but people have sent me excerpts that were translated that is literally explaining these races, and I know what they look like. That is them. But Kono is kind of dolphin looking. They're not very water oriented, but they do look like dolphins, esque sort of. They're not dolphins. They have hands and legs and all that, but they have the equivalent of like a long neck that comes out with that dolphin sort of beak, and gray skin that's always moist, and things like that. They also, by the way, while we're on the topic, it's just interesting. They don't urinate or defecate. Everything happens through their skin. So they'll drink and eat, or no, they eat these herbs that has all their water content, and everything comes out through their skin. So that was just a whole other topic. I've spoken about that many times, but again, other similarities. I know that for sure, and by the way, this is what the rabbi always said, because we were speaking about him earlier, everything is connected to everything. We all know that. And I think our goal is to find how everything is connected to everything. And I think that's why these interviews should be happening, where you speak about what you know, I speak about what I know and experienced. We mesh that 2 together, and let's see if we can paint this bigger picture and this bigger puzzle. So you did speak about, if you're comfortable with sharing this, we had a conversation regarding Rabbi AA in regards to the organization. You shared a few lines over there before we went live. Would you be comfortable with sharing what you shared privately, publicly?
Yeah, due to this interview that we're having, when you first reached out to me about a month and a half ago, I've been feeling his energy, a strange energy, an energy I never picked up on before. And so when I asked my higher self to see who was trying to communicate with me, he kept saying, I am the leader of TLS. And, I am, which is the organization that Jason Shirka is a part of, and they did confirm that you are working for them, you are an instrument for them, and he was just connecting with me, just letting me know that we have a joint mission together, and that's all he was telling me. He said that your work and my work are eventually going to complement each other, and they are already, but we have the same aim. And so, yeah, it was just a brief telepathic communication where he was communicating with me, just confirming that your work and my work are eventually going to integrate and fulfill prophecies, fulfill prophecies and stuff.
There's something that he always said. It's a part of one of his big teaching. By the way, for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about here and you want to be caught up, I'm going to give you a very, very brief overview. TLS is an organization known as the Light System. They work in both the physical realms and the spiritual realms, higher dimensions. I know that they work with other organizations as well. I don't have a part in that. I have a part in just TLS and sharing information and awareness on their behalf whenever that happens. So documents like the Pyramid Code, Rays of Light, things like that are the beginning of that cult-like disclosure process. I've interviewed one, soon to be two, individuals that work within the organization. One known as Ray, the other one known as the Black Widow, and that one's actually going to come out very soon. But when we speak about the rabbi, there are certain leaders of the organization. It has nothing to do with religion or race or ethnicity or any of that. Just so happens to be that one of the leaders of a few in this life, his destiny was to be a rabbi. Why, how? I don't know the answers to that. But he works mainly with things of Kabbalah and mysticism and things like that. That's where the abilities come from. There are other leaders of the organization, both physical and non-physical. So that's where we go more into your world, Ismael, which you would understand a whole lot better of that higher realm communication of how they do certain things. But there are other physical leaders, like there's one Japanese man. He's very, 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 very old, over 600 years old, in a human body, human being. Eats a certain way, lives a certain way, works with the organization, for the organization as one of the leaders as well. So just a super brief synopsis and background summary for anybody who doesn't understand. And if you do want to learn more about that organization, I have tons of interviews and all that you can check out on YouTube or any one of my platforms. So just for anybody that's new to this, that doesn't understand what's going on. So Ismael, there's one thing that the rabbi many things that he always shared, but there's one of the things that he shares in terms of a teaching and knowledge that needs to be handed down that's very controversial. I don't think you agree with this one based on certain things that you've said in the past. I'm curious to see your stance. Maybe we can make sense of this in a different way. Mm-hmm. So, of course, in the world of duality, our conclusion is just like there are positive races, there are negative races. The rabbi and the organization as a whole is extremely insistent on the fact that when it comes to physical, and I emphasize physical, I'm not talking about dark energies and dark consciousnesses. I'm talking about physical, extraterrestrial, meaning life that's physical on other planets, that's not on Earth, that doesn't originate from Earth. They're very adamant on the fact that the last planet that has evil as we know it, physically speaking, in this dimension is Earth. And they keep saying over and over, extraterrestrial life at this point in time, there are no negatively polarized extraterrestrial beings. So my question was, well, how the hell do you explain anything like reptilians? And their answer was, reptilians exist, but they are of the human species, a different race within the human species that at this point in time originate over here. They're pretty much what they're saying is there's no physical extraterrestrial being right now physically in a body that's coming to destroy us or hurt us or do any of that. And it's a very controversial point anytime I bring that up. And I'm only the messenger. I can't tell you that I've been to every planet and I know that. I'm just the messenger for information. And on that one, I do resonate with it, which is why I choose to stand behind it. But I'd like to know, from your perspective, is there any way to bridge the gap over here and make sense between what you and many others are saying and what the TLS organization is saying, specifically the rabbi?
All right, so in terms of physical extraterrestrials, well, the negative regressives that I've been talking about are not physical like me and you. They exist in the lower fourth dimension, which is a totally different frequency. They operate from a different reality, and so that's why they don't appear to be physical. But at their level of reality, if we were to shift our vibrational frequency to higher octave or higher dimension, then they would appear to be physical. So to us, they just appear as just negative energies, negative entities, negative energetic frequencies, whatever you want to call it. They did originate in the Orion system, according to my research. They come from the Thuban and the Alpha Draconis system from a planet called An, A-L-N. And from that system, they were able to infiltrate us and bring their royal draconian bloodline to the earth. And that explains the elite families of the dark cats. Okay. The dark cats are very, very, reptilian oriented. They carry a high concentration of this Draco DNA within their genetics. And that's why they do what they do. They're in service to self. They have a conqueror mentality, a manipulative, my way or the highway. And and they feed off of our energy. Earth to them has been like a lush farm for thousands of years, but their time is up, So
I'm understanding something as you're. Can I share something?
Sure.
I don't mean to cut you off.
Oh, it's okay.
What I'm just feeling it right now. It's like that's what happens sometimes. I'm just like, oh, okay, there's something that makes sense here. So I think a way to bridge that gap is by saying that they may originate from a race that may be negatively polarized in that way. But in this life, as their physical bodies of being born with a mother and a father right now in 1950, 60, 70, or 80, they are physically human beings with an origination from somewhere else. And that's why we call them evil extraterrestrials.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, I can go with that. I'm with you on that one. I'm definitely okay.
And that explains why throughout history they intermarried among themselves to keep that bloodline strong. Cousins marrying cousins, so forth and so on. We see this with the Windsors. We see this with the different elite families. I don't want to mention any names, but you get me. They're different than we are. What makes them different than we are is that we carry a very, how can I say it? We're a combination of 22 or 23 different genetic races, and they're all humanoid. They're all galactic humanoids, and they don't have that. We have a wider range of emotional capacity than they do. We also have what I call the God gene, which is a genetic strand that allows us in physical form to reach non-physical realities, which means that, for the first time in cosmic history, we humans of the earth are giving an opportunity to literally become physical immortals, as opposed to being non-physical immortals. Or
100%. It's funny that you say that because I'm going to go back to TLS for a second in terms of the terminology that they use, which, by the way, I also want to emphasize that everybody uses different terminology. For example, Ray will share many times there are 10 dimensions. There are other people like yourself that say 14, 15, 16, so all or whatever it was. So that doesn't mean that there's a discrepancy. It just means that there's a different way of understanding certain things. And I personally call that the terminology crisis, almost like how do we define the word God? Because you could say God, I could say God, and we think two completely different things. So I wanted to say something and I just lost my train of thought in terms of the rabbi. What was the last thing that you said?
That we're the only race in the multiverse capable of evolving into the non-physical realities.
Yes, okay, I just remembered. So one of the things that the rabbi always says, and it's also in Rays of Light, and more portions of that text or document will be coming out in the near future, it's always reaching what the organization he calls the age of love in physical form. The age of love is a time, so to give context, the way that they break up certain eras in terms of terminology of TLS is the dark ages, the age of darkness before December 21st, 2012. December 21st, 2012 moving forward is what they call the age of light. There was an energetic shift, a shift in polarity. Certain things happened astrologically and a whole lot more than just that. And we entered what they call the age of light. Other people can call it different things, but that's just the terminology they use. The age of light, they explain, is a time of revelation, a time where the truth is exposed. A lot of things are exposed. Darkness comes crumbling down. Darkness is exposed, and we move and segue eventually from the age of light into what they call the age of love. So Christians may call it the second coming of Jesus. Jews may call it the days of the Messiah. Buddhists may call it the days of Nirvana. Everybody has different terminology explaining the same idea over here in a different way. And pretty much what the age of love, from the way that they explained it at least, is it's a time of like, we're all one. We're all living together. There's no borders, but not in the globalist way. I really want to emphasize that. There's no borders because borders are really the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, where you need a piece of paper to tell you can't step on this piece of grass, but you could be on this side of a line that we made up, And I don't want that to be taken in the way that certain, the whole new world sort of people are going into. I'm not talking about it from that side, and I'm being careful with my words, obviously. But the age of love is a time of we're one, we're together, we're still different and unique and creative, but we're all in unity, living as one, helping each other, supporting each other. And we could reach that, and we do reach that in higher dimensions out of body. But what the rabbi always emphasized is exactly what you just said, of bringing this new age of love, if you want to call it, as an experience that we can experience in physical form. So it's like that's what that's the goal, and one of the main points of the TLS organization, of the light system, to bring that time as soon as possible, with as little damage along the way, with as little bloodshed and death and disease along the way, and of course not interfering with free will along the way. So I just wanted to add that to what you were saying, because again, I like bringing up those synchronicities to see how can we come together, how can we work together, and really unite to make this world a better place.
Right, and that has actually been the core of my teachings. I've been teaching DNA activation, dormant DNA, 12-strand DNA, becoming physical human angels while maintaining physical form, becoming immortal, having amazing, godlike superpowers. I've been teaching that. That's a part of my message. And again, this message isn't really coming from me. It's coming from, the spiritual organizations that I work with, the Emerald Order and stuff. And so that makes a lot of sense that the rabbi teaches the same thing. So that's why his telepathic communication with me was very, you just validated it.
Awesome. There's another point I want to bring up here.
Sure.
It's very interesting. It comes from a document that actually really put me on the map, a document that I received from the organization when I first started in the public eye. That document is called the Pyramid Code. By the way, for anybody who wants to read it, the Pyramid Code is free. It's on unified.tv in the free library section. You can download it in about 10 languages. It's open to anybody who wants to read it. And I definitely encourage you all to go check it out if you haven't already. And I, by the way, would love to hear your feedback, Ismael. If you haven't read that yet, I would totally ask you to, as a request, and maybe we can do another show about that as well after you read it, and just see what you maybe remember from that. And the reason why I say remember is because I've heard you say multiple times in the past that you remember living the reincarnation, the life in your past as King Solomon. So that's correct, yes?
Yes, correct.
Okay, you want to make sure I'm not confusing any names. So when I first heard that, I had a discrepancy within me, because I said, well, wait a second. In the Pyramid Code, and the reason why I lean on that is because of all of my validating experiences with the organization, with Ray and all that. Ray explicitly says that, and there's a whole chapter about this when it comes to King Solomon and King David and all that. He explicitly says that he remembers, because he lived in that time, and that's what the Pyramid Code is really all about, that King Solomon in his current life is somebody who we call Adam. Adam is not his real name. I know Adam, an amazing man, somebody that, by the way, is even higher than the rabbi in ranks when it comes to the TLS organization. So just grasp that for a second, because the guy is on a different level when it comes to the soul life, the spiritual life, the spirit life. So I called him just about 3 hours ago, 4 hours ago, something like that. And I said, listen, I'm interviewing this really interesting guy, spoken to him a couple times. His name is Ismael Perez. And he claims to be the reincarnation, I guess that would be the right word back, of King Solomon. How do you explain that you're saying that it's Adam and he's saying that it's him? What's going on? So before I give the answer that Ray gave, I want to ask you the question. How do you explain that what I first saw is like, what's going on here? There might be a discrepancy.
Sure. So Solomon, in ancient times, was an oversoul, an oversoul that embodied human form as to why he was able to do what he did. He was actually a great white wizard. To some, he was a demigod. Some of the things that he was able to perform were just beyond. powerful alchemist, would even enslave demons, the demons of Goish, with his ring. He would put them to work, and the demons feared him. So to many people, he was like a god because of his abilities. But so because he was a very powerful soul, through his lineage, there's always been fragments of him, conscious aspects of his consciousness that have incarnated over and over. And so, according to my regress, I've done past life regression with professionals. One of the things that they told me is I was always a wizard, a type of hermit guardian living in the mountains, advising the kings against the empires. Form your armies in 2 weeks. The empire's coming. For the sake of freedom and liberation. So I was known as the alchemist. I was always known as a healer. They used to call me the man of the mountains. So it was confirmed that I was always either an alchemist, healer, great white wizard, or I was a king, or I was a warrior. But now I'm like supposed to be the integration, the culmination of everything, of all my lifetimes. So what I'm seeing here is that Adam is a different aspect of my oversoul.
So when I asked him that question, he said, listen, I don't know the guy personally, but I can't tell you that he's not telling the truth, because there could always be multiple souls. That's a part of one body. And as a matter of fact, when it comes to a soul, a body, an experience of a body like King Solomon, that's that powerful. It's not that uncommon to have multiple souls in one body, because that's what generates that much power in that way, with the perfect combination in that way. So okay, that's really interesting, because at first I'm like, well, wait a second, there's got to be a discrepancy. And then when I spoke to him, he brought that up, and I'm like, okay, fine, no problem. I can totally go with that. And by the way, the reason why I bring this up is because, again, if anybody knows me, and I encourage everybody to do this, it's always discernment, because there are a lot of things that a lot of people say that I want to be true. There half the things that a lot of people say I want it to be true, but there's a difference between wanting it to be true and then is this real? So that's why I wanted to ask you that question as a level of discernment. And I, for the record, I'm with that answer. It's completely probable, especially in a place like King Solomon. So just on that reincarnation, now that we have you, do you have any remembrance, in-depth details of that reincarnation, or
I do. I do. Just like in my current lifetime, I was very disciplined. I would wake up very early in the morning, and I would exercise and work out. I guess according to the person who did my past life regressions, I was always 6'3", and I was always buff with a six-pack. So I was always like a warrior, looking like a warrior. Solomon was like that too. He was extremely tall, and he was very built, like a Superman hero. And I just remember waking up early, always doing my exercises, working out, but, lifting rocks and everything. I mean, I was strong in that lifetime. And I just also remember having a very disciplinary routine throughout the day. After my workout, I would eat pure living foods, organic living foods, which is what I do now. I don't feed my body anything other than living raw organics. I also remember I do remember having many wives. And a lot of it had to do with
he said that. You'll read it. I want you to read the Pyramid Code. It talks a lot about him. Okay.
But that had a lot to do with the proliferation of my blood, which is what later became the Holy Grail through Jesus, Mary Magdalene. But that's why it was like a polygamous type of setting for me during those days, was because it was all about proliferating my blood to as many people as possible. Having many children. And that explains 13% of the world population today who are Rh negative blood type, because of that. I also remember, other kings. I remember the fact that everyone, including the Egyptian pharaohs, would always come to me for advice, because they understood that they used to think I knew everything. And in some cases, as Solomon, some of these other emperors would even wrongly classify me as God. And I would always remind them, I am not a God, I am an instrument. And I just remember that they would always try to deify me, but I would always correct them and say, no, don't deify me. I also remember doing a lot of writing. I wrote, I think, tons of manuscripts, which later were consolidated into, some of the Old Testament books, like the Book of Proverbs, the Book of Kings. They were all written by Solomon, among other manuscripts that were left out of the canonization process. I wrote a lot about the secrets of immortality. I revealed the secrets of alchemy, how to how to transform your physical body into pure plasma, light body, revealing, the deepest secrets when it came to ascension and immortality. And I think those records I would leave to my closest disciples, not disciple. I want to call them students. I was a wizard. They were like my students. I want to call them chelas, whatever, students, apprentices. And I do remember that I had an inner group of apprentices that I would teach the inner mysteries to. And then I would have an outer group that weren't necessarily as evolved like my inner group. And then I would teach them in parables. I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
interesting. There's I want to read you a line over here. It's on page 18 of the Pyramid Code. It says King Solomon would spend time there. Actually, let me go one back. Only the high priest was allowed to go inside the Holy of Holies once a year during the Day of Atonement. In Judaism and Hebrew, it's called Yom Kippur. However, the high priest and his assistants would go there every so often, not just on the Day of Atonement. King Solomon would spend time there in isolation for the purpose of spiritual elevation. He would even use the Holy of Holies as a place to read and write. So it speaks about the fact that there was a lot of writing. I think you're going to find it funny when you read this, because he isn't very fond in that life of King Solomon, meaning he like explains how like very powerful, a lot of like nobility in terms of the power that they had of what they did. He did say that King Solomon, from his memory, was much better than King David. King David, his father, was a lot more violent and always preoccupied with wars and things like that. And King Solomon came into the picture, and the way he calls it, it's religious people would like murder him if they knew who he was. But he calls them a dysfunctional family. It's not good. It's not good. But he says, it's like, I want you to read it. It's very interesting. It goes a lot into depth about somebody else's remembrance of working with the family, because his job in that life was the high priest at the time, working with the family of King David, King Solomon, and everything that was going on within the Holy Temple and all that. So I think that, we could talk about this part for a very long time and go super in depth.
Yes.
I say we'll leave that for another time. Maybe after you read this document, we can go deeper into that, because it can be super interesting. And let me see what else, because I do have a few more questions that I don't want to lose track of. Okay, there's a couple more questions. Can we dive back to a different topic for a second when it comes to reptilians? So shape-shifting, that whole deal. This was a topic that people wanted me to speak about. I speak about it a lot because there are certain individuals, when it comes to TLS, that there's a differentiation between reptilian and negative, and then you're a human being that has the ability to shapeshift because you have certain traits. That's from my knowledge, from my experience, from what I know with certain individuals. For the record, the head of the New York chapter of TLS, she's a woman. She's a very powerful woman. She has the ability to do what we would call shapeshifting like that. So in a matter of like a split second, she can form into everything with the exception of sea creatures. Don't ask me why, I don't know. Sea creatures, and I'm trying to think anything else. I think that's the exception, that she can't for some reason. I don't know if that's like a universal thing. But my question for you is, what is your knowledge that when it comes to differentiation or not? I want to understand where you're coming from between the reptilian race, if you want to call it, the differentiated race within human beings today on planet Earth, and individuals who have the ability to shapeshift.
Well, technically, we all have the ability to shapeshift. Remember, we're only using 4% of our full genetic material.
Okay.
All of our powers lie within what scientists call junk DNA. But to answer your question, we have shapeshifters in both light and dark. It is an ability that people were able to harness through discipline, practice, and lots of concentration and different techniques and modalities that they underwent to be able to master this technique. Just like in TLS, we also have shapeshifters in the highest levels of the Alliance that could, just like in the movie X-Men, they're able to look like anyone.
Okay.
And so we have those people. They do exist. As far as like reptilians that are shapeshifting, some have, and those are the ones that have been how can I say it? Those are the ones that are mixing their genetics with nanotech and AI. That's what allows
Okay.
them.
So
Yeah.
you're saying that that's like a different way of doing it. That's like not.
Yes, they're using technology to do it. They don't use it with their mind. Yeah, that's the difference between the humans that are able to shapeshift and the reptilians that are not. They use technology to shapeshift.
Interesting.
So it's more like an overlay hologram that they project that give people a sort of lens to see them in a different shape or manner. But it's technology, and that's the difference.
So just to touch up on a few things. When it comes to shapeshifting, my knowledge on it is there's two different types that I know of, at least. I don't want to say definitively that there's only two, but there's two that I know of. One is holographic shapeshifting, which I'll explain in a second. The other one is physical shapeshifting. So holographic forms of shapeshifting, nobody is barred from that one. Anybody can do that, but it takes a longer period of time, meaning pretty much if I have to like do my best to simplistically explain that process, it's pretty much changing the density of your body to become one of more of like a hologram, reforming when you're in that new density, and then re-densifying, becoming more dense again into that new form. And once you go through that process, and from the beings that I know that have done that, it takes about a year. Once you go through that process, and this is part of what TLS would teach certain extraterrestrial life when they're forming for assimilation purposes, when they're forming from their form to have to look like a human, most of them go through the holographic form of shapeshifting. So they go through training for about a year. They change the density of their body, they change form, then they go into that other form, and then that's what we call holographic memory, if I remember correctly. Holographic memory. Once you complete the cycle once, almost like muscle memory, only it's better than muscle memory, you're able to go back and forth very quick. But you have to go through that process through holographic shapeshifting if you take that process. From my understanding, that's open to everybody. Me, I can do it. You can do it. Anybody that's watching this can do it. You just need to be taught. It's all about, manipulating and playing with energy, frequency, density, vibration, things in that realm.
Absolutely.
The physical side of shapeshifting, for example, the way that the New York chapter of TLS, that woman does it, is different. She's born with something, there's some sort of like genetic marker in her DNA that you got to be born with it to be able to do that. So let's take the rabbi, for example. The rabbi is one of the most advanced people that I know. He cannot shapeshift the way she does because he simply doesn't have it. She has it, so she was born with it. She can do it, but she has to be taught how to do it. So she was taken under the wing of the rabbi about 40 years ago. She was taught how to do things, and today she's the head of one of the chapters. So she's a very important person in that organization as well. So I'm bringing that up just because, again, I think it's always cool to share information back and forth, see what we can both, come out of this, and complement each other, like you said in the beginning of this interview. But what do you know? What do you think? What do you feel about what I just said with those two different processes when it comes to shapeshifting?
I feel they're accurate. I feel that the female that works in New York that does it naturally was actually genetically modified. That's why she has it already inbuilt in her genetics, and she doesn't have to do it through the holographic way. That makes perfect sense. A lot of the enhanced super soldiers that were sent off to fight in the galactic wars and beyond were actually genetically modified to do stuff like that and other things, as well, such as levitating objects with their mind and, being able to have super strength and lift a car like nothing. But those are different abilities that comes with the enhancements of human genetics. So I think that lady from New York that you're talking about was genetically enhanced from the get-go, and that's why she was automatically born like that from the beginning.
Interesting. There's one thing I want to bring up again to bridge certain gaps. People that may say like, what the hell are these two guys talking about with shapeshifting? Let me just remind everybody, I like bringing things back to nature. Albert Einstein said something that I love. He said, look deep into nature and you will understand everything better. And that is the truest quote I've ever seen. And for anybody that thinks shapeshifting is something that's out of the ordinary or impossible, I'm just going to remind you that a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. And nobody ever taught that caterpillar how to turn to a butterfly. So what's the difference between something that literally inches like this with no wings, suddenly without being taught anything, going onto a tree or a branch hanging for 2 weeks without eating or drinking. Think about what I'm saying. It sounds crazy, but we've normalized it because we see it. This thing that most people are like, that's not a conscious thing. Human beings are more advanced. Well, this little caterpillar that God knows where that thing came from goes onto a branch, hangs upside down, doesn't eat or drink for 2 weeks, suddenly goes through this metamorphosis, breaks out of the cocoon, and can suddenly fly. And for anybody that, and I'm bringing that right now because, again, there are people that, because we haven't normalized these things yet, it sounds crazy. And it's not. Because look deep into nature and you will understand everything better. If it happens there, why can't it happen here? If we're under the impression that our consciousness is more advanced in a way, for those of you who believe that, than the consciousness of a plant or a caterpillar, then of course you should be able to do what the caterpillar can do. And that's the way that we ground it. And the same goes for any other supernatural abilities. If a bird doesn't need navigation to fly 1,000 miles, and can go around hurricanes and earthquakes and tornadoes and all those disasters, natural disasters that happen around the world. Some are actually natural, for the record. But if they know how to get around that without technology, physical technology and navigation radars, then why can't we? If animals know when a storm is coming, then why do we need the Weather Channel that's wrong 50% of the time? And if whales know how to go from one ocean to another without navigation, then why can't we? So I bring these things to show us this is nothing new. This has been happening for a very long time. And if we want to continue expanding on this great awakening, which is most definitely happening, we're going to have to start normalizing things that we thought were impossible yesterday, that we thought were impossible a week ago and a year ago and 10 years ago and so on and so forth. And that happens when we dissolve and crumble belief systems and start embodying new ones that are more in resonance with where we're going to. And that's what evolution looks like. That's what growth looks like. It's just a matter of change, you know?
Yeah, we have to reprogram ourselves from our conditioning, societal conditioning. Yes. And that's one of the reasons why it's hard for many people to even fathom that they have disabilities or that they could do this or that. I think that the only thing that's hindering us from really being able to do the impossible, self-heal, self-regulate, communicate telepathically, lift objects with their minds, telepathy, all that stuff. The only thing that's hindering us, it's our belief systems. The moment we shift our consciousness, because perception is key. If you truly believe that you could actually levitate objects, I guarantee you will begin to levitate objects. But the only thing holding you back is the limited belief systems that were imprinted upon our minds, through the educational system, through religion. Religion is a big factor in that. And of course, that's one of the tools that the dark cats have been using for thousands of years to keep us in a very limited understanding and a very limited mental capacity from really understanding or really fully grasping our potential. And one of the things that I believe that is going to be part of the age of light is the fact that we are going to be able to enhance these abilities and powers even more so beyond telekinesis and telepathy. That's just my opinion.
I'm with you on that one. I think it's a point of, again, remembering.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. The other day I was sitting, it was maybe a month ago, I was sitting around the bonfire at my parents' house in New York, and I was just sitting by myself, and everybody, I don't know where they were. And I kept getting this message that kept coming in. I don't know if I ever shared it, but I'm going to after this interview, maybe as like a text graphic, because I think it's really important for all of us. And I kept hearing through feeling, my purpose is to remember in order to help others remember who they are. My purpose is to remember in order to remind. That's what it was. And it kept repeating, my purpose is to remember in order to remind. And I heard that over and over and over again. And I'm like, wow, because that's what we're doing here. And that's, again, it goes back to the beginning of this interview to sum that all up, where this isn't about ego anymore of this person's better than this. There is no hierarchy in the world that we're building right now. That's not how it works anymore. There's unity. And in some ways, in this physical world, there are certain ways to organize certain things in what would appear as a hierarchy But when I say hierarchy, I don't mean in terms of better and under and over and under and better and worse. I mean just in the form of we're still physical beings that operate in the physical world. And personally, I think we have to stop trying to escape the matrix and start and begin to embrace the matrix and understand how the matrix works. And that's part of the remembering process, in my opinion. And part of what I believe you're bringing to the table, Ismael, where when we start understanding these universal laws, when we start remembering these universal laws of what the physical world is actually governed by, then we become masters of the matrix. And why would you ever try to escape something that you're a master of? So the key in my eyes is just, and again, just my opinion and perspective is, let's stop trying to escape, and let's stop trying to beat others, and let's stop trying to compete with others, and let's start moving into the world that we're building here, which is we're all in this together one way or another. And again, unity does not mean we all agree. Unity simply means we all embrace and respect one another, even if we don't agree. And by the way, my favorite is when we don't agree, because that's when we can find how, what the rabbi says, everything is connected to everything. And if we can start trying to find that in everything that we see as a discrepancy, I think that's when we'll begin the true segue from that age of love, age of light, as TLS calls it, into the age of love and make this world a better place. So with that, I'm going to ask you, Ismael, do you have any big picture closing messages to the audience that you want everybody to hear from you?
Well, my message is to, in the higher levels of reality, in the non-physical dimensions, the war has already been won by the light, which means that it's just a matter of time before it trickles down into the physical. So the victory is already, it's already been won. The war in the future, because, the future, the past, every lifetime, every, period in life, in history, is all happening at the same time from a higher perspective. Time is an illusion, seeing it from a third dimension, but from the highest levels of reality, it's all happening at once. And even though, AI seems to possess or, seems to become a threat as it becomes more sentient every day more and so on, eventually we do win that war against AI in the future. It's already taking place. And we do it by accessing and activating our dormant DNA and the God gene that we have. The God gene is what wins this war against AI, because everything we have in technology that exists within the technological field is a mimicking of the natural technology that we have in our DNA. We are a living, natural, quantum, biological technology. And that explains why we're only using 4%. So when our dormant DNA begins to activate, that's going to change everything. That's going to change everything. And yeah, we've already won the war. We just have to just stay grounded, keep yourself, in a state of healthiness, mind, body, and spirit. It's important to only be mindful or be focused in the presence without worrying or without having anxiety, and just enjoy life, enjoy every aspect of life, because really, that's what matters is how much are we involved in the day-to-day things that we do? Are you present in the moment when you are taking your dog for a walk? Are you present in the moment, for those that are parents, when you're feeding your child, if they're toddlers? Are you looking into their eyes? And are you, binding? Are you, how can I say, connecting with them on a spiritual level? So yeah, just be in the presence in everything you do, because that's where our power lies. It's in the here and the now.
100%. I'm glad we did this. I had a really, really good time. Again, I will always say that if somebody supports somebody or somebody doesn't support somebody, don't simply listen to that person. I support Ismael, especially after this conversation. I think you're a really cool dude, by the way, just for the record.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. And I encourage all of you to, don't just say, you know what, Ismael's right, because I support him. Do your own thing, and vice versa. If there's somebody that says, you know what, I don't like this guy, there's something off, that's fine. People say that about me all the time. Do your own research, both physically and spiritually. Listen to your heart. You are your own leader. And so long as we still live in this world of like, oh, this person said this and this person said this, I mean, how do you want to take your power back? So I really want to, you got to just like be your own person. Stop outsourcing your power to anybody that's listening to this, not to even leaders that have your best interest in mind. I promise you. I always tell you guys, do not just listen to what I say and say, okay, that's the way. No way. No, I would be doing you a disservice if I even allowed for something like that to happen. And I'm sure on this one, I'm going to speak on behalf of you, Ismael. I know that he agrees with me because I can just feel you right now. We're good on that one. So be your own leader. Listen to your heart. Listen to yourself. There's always going to be different information that comes out one way or another. And if you rely on this age of information with endless discrepancies everywhere on the surface, you're going to end up a real paranoid, human being that, I don't even know what to tell you about that one. What I'm trying to say here is reason and logic, very important, but they are not the leaders. The leader is intuition. Lead with intuition. Take your reason and logic, have them double check your intuition along the way. Sometimes you'll get confused. Sometimes you'll be wrong. That's okay. It's part of being a human being. That's part of the remembrance process. So I really just wanted I always remind people of that, Ismael, in any interview, in any show that I do. You guys got to remember that the power is within you, and externalizing it will not change anything that we're trying to change in this world. It's all about understanding and remembering that the power is within you. It always has been. It always will be. And this isn't about taking your power back, because nobody's ever taken it from you. That's not possible. This is about remembering that the power has always been
Absolutely
in your hands and in your heart. So
yeah,
go for it.
And stop expecting a savior to come from the sky or to come from outside of you. The truth is that each and every single one of you is your own savior. All the prophecies that talked about the return of these beautiful individuals, there's different names to describe them. They're talking about us. They're talking about people that are doing the spiritual work, that are going within and are discovering this connection to source. And as a result of that, they become empowered. So every single one of us is what all the religious prophecies have been expecting, have been, talked about as the coming of the host or the coming of the angels. We are those angels in human form, as a reminder. And also for those that haven't had an opportunity to read my book, it is the bestseller. There's a reason why people are loving this information. Like I said, it took me many years to research it, 10 years to write it. It's just to give you guys a little warning. It is very dense. You might want to read it more than once, but it is mind-blowing. And it's definitely going to activate you. And also for those that are interested in learning to see if they're a starseed and what type of starseed they are, I also teach an online course called Starseed Cosmology. And I could, give you the links for that for those that are interested.
Yes, please. That'd be great.
Thank you. I am booked till December, but I still have some spots left for the December course.
Awesome.
With that,
right here, Our Cosmic Origin is the book that Ismael is speaking about. And while we're on that topic, and please send me those links so I can put them in the description below as well. I do want to announce a really exciting announcement that Ismael will be hosting an exclusive series on Unified TV called Our Cosmic Origin, where he's going to be diving deeper into, the important portions of that information within the book as well. So that's going to be coming in the near future on Unified TV. I'm super excited for that partnership and collaboration, Ismael. I think it's going to bring a lot of power and awareness and wisdom and more informed on everything sort of theme that and energy that we're going to be bringing to the table through this. And I want to just thank you for also, coming into that collaboration and welcoming it so beautifully. I think this is going to be the beginning of something awesome. I'd love to see you as a creator on Unified TV in general, because we have really big plans for that. And any way that we can work together in any way that I can support you, I'm more than happy to. And with that, I know that I've said it, and a lot of people have asked me about a month ago when you were sharing, and I believe you still are sharing a lot of, more personal information regarding certain ailments and illnesses with your wife. I do want to let everybody know that, and Ismael, because we've had this conversation, that the offer is on the table when it comes to the energy enhancement system. And we've been speaking about that back and forth. I want to just put it on the record here as well. If you need any help and your wife needs any help, I I'm more than happy to set something up and make it happen and do whatever
Thank you.
needs to be done to get her that treatment if she is interested.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, brother.
Absolutely. Anyways, you're amazing. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you. I know everybody else does as well. I'm going to ask everybody, take this interview, share it far and wide. I think this was a very, very powerful one. It was dense. There were a lot of different topics, anywhere from what Ismael speaks about and is connected to, all the way to TLS, how everything's connected. And ultimately, I would say what I feel from this interview, beyond just transparency and how we're talking about everything, is everything is connected to everything. Always bring it back to that very important quote. So again, Ismael, thank you. And thank you everybody who tuned in and has been a part of this interview. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you all soon.